Hello and welcome to Books Up Close. My name's Chris Lloyd. I'm sorry I haven't made a video in forever, but the podcast has taken over my life and I'm hoping you're enjoying it. I hope you are listening to it. If not, please go subscribe right now on whatever podcast platform you use. Subscribe, like all the videos, add a review if you listen on Apple Podcasts and all the rest of it. Share some episodes. If you share an episode on Instagram and you tag the show or tag me, send me your address and I will send you some podcast merch as a little Christmas gift. So please do that. However, I thought I should at least record an end of year video. I've been doing those for a while now, so I thought I should get on here and do that this week and get it out to you before the end of the year. And this is probably a little shorter video than usual, but here are my top books of 2025, my top albums of 2025, and my top podcasts. I have not seen enough films or enough television to add my thoughts. You can go find those elsewhere. I've barely seen all the films I want to see, and most of the films I've watched are not from 2025. So that will be of no use to any of you. However, I tried to whittle down my top books to a top 5, but I could not do it. So you're having a top 6, and you're gonna have to deal with it. Firstly, I will tell you about 2 poetry books because poetry is important to me. This one won't be a surprise to many of you, but it is That Broke Into Shining Crystals by Richard Scott. Not only because it's a beautiful book, but it's so unbelievably rich and clever and emotional and formally daring. He does so many things at once. There's a episode of the podcast with Richard where we talk about one of his beautiful still life poems, but the collection is way more than that. It's split into 3 parts. The first part is a series of still life poems where he's kind of referring to a range of paintings from that still life tradition. The middle section, he takes Andrew Marvell's poem To His Coy Mistress, and he uses the language of that poem to remake a range of other poems. He only uses the words from the Marvell poem and recreates it in what's called a vocabulary clept, which is an amazing word. And then the third section, he writes these poems in relation to crystals, and he uses those as kind of a starting, like a jumping off point to think through the body and desire and identity and so many other things. And at the heart of the book is a story of abuse, sexual abuse in childhood, and that kind of runs through these 3 parts in sometimes direct, sometimes indirect ways. But the poems are not kind of reducible to that experience. They're not about abuse in that kind of explicit way, but they are rather ways of thinking through how the past, how trauma, how memory kind of runs underneath everything and kind of like erupts in certain moments. And it really is just a beautiful, beautiful book in every possible way. I think the poem's incredible. So please do go get Richard Scott's That Broke Into Shining Crystals. The other poetry book that I want to talk about is Joy Is My Middle Name by Sasha Devevec McKenney. This is a glorious book that came out from Fitzcarraldo, from their kind of poetry series. And this is Devevec McKenney's first collection, and it really offers you a kind of bracing way into her writing style and way of approaching the world. Every poem jumps back and forth through registers, through different kinds of language, through different forms. Like every poem on the page you kind of turn over and it looks very different. You've got kind of like long, expansive ones like this, and then we've got like some kind of short, thin ones, some like longer ones. We've got some prose poems. You've got titles like, this is just, I randomly opened, Jordan says he loves me so much he'll delete his Instagram for me, to I'm starting to like this version of myself actually. Or the very first poem, which is called Kento for the Night I Tried Stand Up, which is this long expanded poem, and it is joyous and hilarious. What's funny is that Joy is Devevec McKenney's middle name, but the poem is thinking joy, it is thinking aliveness, it is thinking the kind of tapestry of cultural references and stories and histories that make up a person. This is like the lyric poem, but kind of the 21st century version that I really have been waiting for. Is the kind of poem I wish I could write. I think she's amazing and funny, and what I also love about this book is there are a ton of notes in the back. You know, usually you'll get a few notes, kind of like this poem is a reference to X or a quote from this thing. But in this book, she kind of writes a long, expansive note for each poem, or the majority of the poems. Like like really in-depth notes that are funny also, and very personal and very her. And it is just fantastic. I love this book. The third book that I am going to suggest, again, is not going to be surprising to any of you if you heard me talk. It is Audition by Katie Kitamura. This is my beat-up proof version that I've been rereading and returning to. This is on the Booker shortlist. And I saw a lot of you book people, book talk, book tube, Instagram folks not getting on with this book, and I really want to have a sit-down conversation with you and figure out what's going on, because this novel, I think, is staggeringly good. Kitamura cannot write a bad sentence. We're not debating that one. But also formally, it is so inventive. She breaks the novel halfway through, and I don't want to give too much away, but that break in the middle kind of gives us two parts to a novel that offer us the same characters, but in slightly different roles, in slightly different settings, and it's quite a staggering feat when you get to that moment. Like, it really kind of breaks the book open, quite literally. But it makes you revise everything you read in the first half, but then you finish the second half and you also think, wait, I might need to revise what happens in the second half too. Like, it's not so simple that one is real and one is unreal. It makes me think of something like Mulholland Drive as well, right? The way that film is like broken into two parts. And there is a film called Audition that everyone keeps asking me about, like, oh, is it in reference to that film? And like, it isn't, but like, it's there in the background, right? But the book is asking about the roles we inhabit in life, and like, which is the performance, which is the audition, which is like the real. And I think it's just an incredible study of character too, of a woman who is approaching kind of like middle age, or like to just after middle age, and thinking what roles are available to her, quite literally as an actress, but also as a woman in the world, and as a woman of colour in the world. What roles are available to her? What is prescribed? What can one inhabit? And I think that speaks to like everyone, really, right? How do you take on the roles that society gives you, or that family gives you, and what do you do with them? Anyway, I think it's brilliant. I've reread it. I love Katie. She knows this. You all know this, but it cannot not be on my list of the best of the year. If you haven't read it, please go do it. And then go and read Intimacies, because that's also fantastic. And then go read her other books. They're all brilliant. I will jump briefly to a non-fiction book, which I reviewed on here before. It's called Enemy Feminisms by Sophie Lewis. I will link to that review so you can go listen to that. I won't talk about it at length, but the reason this is on my top 6 is because it is one of the most readable, accessible, while also clever kind of surveys of feminism, and especially feminisms that are wedded to kind of anti-democratic, anti-equity movements and ideas. So she runs through, as the subtitle suggests, TERFs, police women and girl bosses against liberation. She thinks about all of the forms of feminism that are anti-liberatory, and the ways in which feminism grafts itself onto those storylines, or how those storylines graft themselves onto feminism. And it is such a kind of like fast-moving take. It's a kind of historical sweep, right? Taking us through the 19th, 20th century, while also kind of remaining really close to details of real people's lives, and giving us that kind of wider framing and theoretical framing. I just think it's brilliant. I strongly recommend it to anyone interested in the history of feminism, or the history of left and right-wing movements, the history of like liberation struggle, even just like how we got to where we are today in relation to how anti-trans activists and anti-abortion activists and fans of the carceral system, like how all of these people are kind of intertwined and overlapping, and how that's happened historically. It's really worth a read. Enemy Feminisms by Sophie Lewis. Another non-fiction book for you is Sara Ahmed's No Is Not a Lonely Utterance, The Art and Activism of Complaining. Sara Ahmed, as you'll know, is a huge, wonderful, important critic, thinker. I love all of her books, her academic stuff, and now her more recent kind of public-facing trade books. And this one is almost a kind of revisiting of one of her others called Complaint, ! That is very much a kind of academic book, and is about complaints within universities and within the university structure and system. And this book takes a kind of wider view and thinks about complaint and what it means to complain, the activism of complaining, in a broader societal sense. It is beautifully written, as all Ahmed books are. It's clever, it's thoughtful, it's thoroughly engaging, it's heartbreaking, but it's also incredibly propulsive. Like, you want to like fly through it. It's really, really worth your time. If you've never read Ahmed before, read this. read The Feminist Killjoy Handbook, read How to Live a Feminist Life, read The Promise of Happiness. There are just so many great books, but this one is super open and accessible, and I think you'll fly through it even while you are enraged and saddened and also galvanized. My final recommendation of these 6 is Stag Dance by Tori Peters. This book is not appearing on best of 2025 lists. I've seen a few now. What is going on? What is going on, people? Why is this not on your list? Just the book is gorgeous in and of itself. I got her to sign it at a reading. She's beautiful. Look at that signature. Sorry, that's not the point, but Tori Peters is a fantastic writer. These 4 stories, maybe novellas, whatever, I don't really care what you call them. Each one is incredible. I know I've reviewed this before, so I'll link to that one, but the title story, Stag Dance, has stayed with me since reading this. It is forever on my mind. There is a scene of kind of what in contemporary parlance you might call like gender euphoria, right? And that moment really struck a chord with me, even though this is a story set in like the 19th century log-in cabins of the Northwest, of the Pacific Northwest. It's just like the setting is not what I would imagine, but it struck to the heart of me in a way that I haven't read for a long time. Tori Peters also cannot write a bad sentence. She's an incredible writer, well, even while doing like really radical things with gender and history and identity and the self. And she said she wrote that story in a moment of like, how do I follow Detransition Baby, this contemporary up-to-date story? And she's like, no one's going to want to read a story about loggers in the 19th century speaking in their weird tongue, but we really do, Tori. This is not what I was expecting, but it's everything I needed. So those are my 6 books. Let me know below if you've read any of them, if you like them, and let me know what your top choices are as well. I'd love to know. Put those in the replies. And also, just to clarify, these are the 2025 books that I'm picking. I've read a lot of books that aren't from 2025 that could have gone on this list, right? I've read a lot of brilliant things that I would put up there, but I really forced myself to only look at 2025 books. So that's why they're there. There are loads of other things that I've read. You can find them on the Instagram. You can see what else I've been liking across the year. I will link those below. Okay, a couple of my favorite albums. I will come to those. This is very specific to my music taste. So you will all have your other favorite albums that I'm sure you'll be like, why isn't that on there? It doesn't really matter. These are the ones that I love this year. Rosalia is not on here. It's a great album. It's just not my favorite album of the year. It may be yours. That's great for you. But these are the ones that spoke to me and I listened to the most. The first, probably the most listened to of those new albums this year was the Bon Iver album. And the song If Only I Could Wait with Danielle Haim really speaks to me. Like, this album is the one for me that is like synthesizes all of Bon Iver's like sonic interests, right? There's the kind of electronic-y stuff, there's the acoustic-y intimate stuff, there's the country stuff that's kind of running through all the different albums, and he kind of ties them together in this really beautiful way. I think it's so soulful, so rich, so layered, but with incredible melodies, gorgeous chord progressions. His voice is like better than ever, and he's got some incredible musicians around him, including the Haim sisters, who are like in the background. They're even there doing BVs on I'll Be There, which I think is an incredible song. And they're just like singing in the background. They're not even credited like as a featuring, but they sound fantastic. And I love the album. It is beautiful. Beginning to end, loved it. Hands down, classic. Best thing Bon Iver has ever made. I'm saying it. Second album I loved is the new Tame Impala album. Also probably not surprising to anyone that knows me, but that's a really, really good Tame Impala album. Again, fun, loads of kind of references in there, lots of different kind of genre stuff feeding in, including like disco and dance and really kind of funky stuff, as well as the more expected dancey electronic end of things. The song Afterthought is hands down my favorite on that album. It is disco, but updated. It is dancey. It has made me really work harder at the gym and on runs. It is the song I will listen to. It is fantastic. The other two that I loved, worth mentioning, is the live album by Kalila that's called In the Blue Light, and it's a live album. She does a lot of the kind of more recent songs as well as some older ones. She sounds incredible. Her band sounds incredible. It's jazzy, it's stripped back. It's worth it. If you like Kalila, you will love this live album. You probably already know it, but it's worth it. gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. And it's a great way into Cleela as well. You can hear the clarity of her voice, the softness of it, the way she uses intonation and pacing. She's great, phenomenal. And then the final album I loved is Bloom by Duran Bernard, who I'm a huge fan of. And there are very few people that I can talk to about him. I don't know, not enough people know who he is, but he is incredible, funny. I saw him at Coco this year and he was a delight to watch. Like, so enthusiastic, so energetic, so silly and funny, with a vocal range that is pretty much unmatched right now among singers out there. Just agility, ability, soulfulness. And it's a really great album too, Bloom. It's really, really good. Finally, some podcast recommendations for you. I'm a big podcast person. Obviously, you should be listening to Books Up Close, the podcast, because it's really good. I hear the host is fantastic. And the other podcast that I produce and edit at my work, which is called Diversifying and Decolonizing the University. If you work in the higher education world or in the education world, please subscribe to that. I will link that one too. It really helps getting as many listens as we can. So those two are really good. But these are the ones that got me through 2025. As ever, I think I've probably selected this as my top podcast for the past couple of years, but Heavyweight is still brilliant. There's a new season. It is really funny. Jonathan Goldstein is wonderful. There is an episode called Kevin. Just go straight to that episode. Kevin from the new season. It totally broke me on my drive to work. It is heartbreaking. It is insightful. It is so tender. It is just gorgeous. Like, really floored me. If you know Heavyweight, go listen to that. If you don't, you're in for a treat. You've got loads of episodes to get through. Listen to Kevin first. It will give you a real insight into what the show is like. On the Media, it's still fantastic, but I feel like everyone knows that one, so I can brush over that quite quickly. But it is still a brilliant show. I listen to it every week without fail. One Song is another show that I really like that I found this year, where these two music producers, DJs, take apart a song with guests and they kind of break down, they have all the stems and they kind of take it apart and think about like what's happening and how it's working, and they contextualize it in music history. It's wonderful. It's a kind of companion piece to Song Exploder, if you like, but not usually with the person that made the song. It's a bit more, let's listen to that tiny individual stem of the drums and see what's happening there. A must listen episode is the one about Shaka Khan's I'm Every Woman. You will hear things in the background that you never heard before. It's with Danielle Smith is the guest on that one. It is brilliant. They also take apart Dolly Parton's Jolene, and you hear some things in that you never would have heard. Like, the beat is not the beat you're expecting. And Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas is a brilliant episode. They take that apart, even though it's like mostly kind of these synthesized sounds and it was put together in a strange way. You can hear some brilliant things, how Mariah stacks her voice 4 times at certain parts and doesn't even like harmonize with herself. It's just like 4 of her voice. Like it's really like thick texture in the song. There's some brilliant isolation of the backing vocals of the fantastic Kelly Price and others. It's worth a listen, especially during the holidays. Go listen to that one. The podcast If Books Could Kill, which I talk about to everyone, is a joy with Michael Hobbs and Peter Shamsuri, who also hosts 5 to 4 and some other things. They take apart all of those kind of like big airport books, those ones that everyone talks about that gets lots of airtime, and they just go through the book systematically, tearing it to shreds with humor, with insight, with tons of knowledge and real careful reading. It is one of the best shows I listen to. I cannot wait to listen to each new one. There's a great 2-parter as well on COVID that I think is fantastic, on the lab leak theory. It is wonderful. But it also takes down some of those authors that you think like, oh, maybe they're quite good, like the Let Them theory, that book, you know the one, or Blink, you know the one. You always see it in like Waterstones and W.H. Smith's Rise on the front, and they really take apart how these books are. Just trash, don't bother. It's a fantastic podcast, go listen to that. And the final recommendation is Better Offline, which is hosted by Ed Zitron. It is a book about tech, but it is also largely these days a podcast about AI and generative AI in particular, and Ed Zitron is not a fan. I have found my kin in him, but he is very, very, very good as a journalist in tearing apart all of the myth-making that Silicon Valley and big media conglomerates and major newspapers, he is good at tearing those people down and the myths that they are perpetuating about AI's possibilities, its uses. He's very good on undermining and questioning and critiquing all of the kind of ethical implications of using Gen AI in all of its ways. To the people that know me, you are sick of me banging on about this, but people, stop using ChatGPT and others. You do not need to do it. It is not a search engine. Go listen to this show. Ed Zitron will convince you. I promise you. He is fantastic. He's so just like energized and funny and silly on the show. And he has some great guests on. Really worth it. Subscribe to that. Subscribe to his Substack. Okay, that's my rundown of 2025 books, music, and podcasts. But as I say, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't. Subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe to my other podcast and the Substack. Find me on Instagram and all of those places. It really means a lot and it helps me reach more people and do helpful stuff. The big news is that season 2 of the podcast is coming in the new year, and I'll do a little release about that soon on Instagram, so keep an eye out. And I have some enormous guests coming on season 2, which I'm so really excited about, ridiculously excited about actually. I'm interviewing one just after I'm making this video, and I can't wait. There are some guests who I am in love with their writing, and yeah, it'll be really exciting to talk to them. So please do follow along with that. As ever, please get in touch. Please write things in the comments. I love reading them and being in touch with you all. But until 2026, that's terrifying. Look after yourselves, keep reading, look after each other, and stay well. See you soon.